Jungkook was on his way home from the office, heading toward the mansion, when his phone vibrated. The screen showed the name of one of his most trusted men. He answered it. Yes? Boss? We've caught Nara. She's at the old building, our usual place, awaiting your orders. At that very second, Jungkook's jaw clenched, his eyes sharpened, and a crooked smile slowly formed on his lips. Without saying a word, he ended the call and immediately turned the steering wheel in the opposite direction. No hesitation. Tonight would be the end of everything. But along the way, his eyes caught something in the rearview mirror. A white car was trailing behind, keeping a safe distance, but steady. He recognized that car, Yin's car. Jungkook smirked faintly. It seemed Yin had spotted his car when she was leaving the hospital earlier, and her curiosity led her to follow him. But Jungkook didn't slow down, nor did he speed up. He let her follow. If she wants to know the truth, then let her see it with her own eyes. Jungkook's car stopped in front of a dilapidated building, surrounded by shadows and a suffocating silence. A dozen bodyguards in black suits were already stationed around the perimeter. Jungkook stepped out of the car and walked with firm steps toward the door. But before entering, he stopped in front of one of his lead bodyguards. My wife will come in after me. Hold her back if you can, but don't be rough. If she's too stubborn, just let her in. The bodyguard gave a silent nod. Without another word, Jungkook walked into the building, a place that had long served as his own personal court of justice. In a dim, shadowy room, Nara sits tied to a chair. Her face is filled with fear, her hair disheveled, and her body trembling. As soon as she sees Jungkook enter, she immediately breaks into tears, pleading. Jungkook, please, I had no choice. My dad told me to. I was just following his orders. You already killed him. You even killed my mom. Isn't your revenge complete? A cold laugh from Jungkook echoes through the room. Don't be stupid, Nara. Who put the poison in my dad's drink? You did that. And you have no idea how broken my mom was when he died from that poison. And now you dare to speak of mercy? Huh? I was forced. Nara screams, sobbing. You just chose the wrong target. Jungkook cuts in sharply. And now, deal with the consequences. He opens his black leather jacket and pulls out a gun. Nara starts screaming hysterically. Please, don't, I'm begging you. Jungkook. Jungkook gives a thin smile. Goodbye, Nara. Oh wait, should I call you Mona, Hannah, or Jasmine? What's your real name? He scoffs. But tonight, none of that matters. Whatever your name is, it means nothing to me. He points the gun at her. You know this place? Jungkook continues, his voice dropping lower. This is the same place, where your dad and mom died by the same hand. Tonight, it's your turn. 3. Nara sobs in fear. 2. Her body shakes violently. 1. The sound of the gunshot shattered the silence. Several seconds passed. Jungkook remained still, staring coldly ahead. Then, Jungkook, a soft voice, one he knew all too well, called his name from the doorway. Jungkook slowly turned his head. A faint smile appeared on his lips. My dear wife, so you've arrived, he murmured to himself. He tucked the pistol back into his jacket, then calmly walked toward Yin, who stood at the threshold, her face pale and eyes wide in disbelief. She was Nara. Nara, she whispered, almost in disbelief. Jungkook nodded once. Yes, now it's finally over between us. Yin stood frozen, overwhelmed by fear, confusion, and utter shock. But before she could ask anything else, Jungkook turned to the bodyguards nearby and gave a firm order. Burn it. Make sure nothing remains, not a single trace. Without hesitation, the bodyguards immediately moved. No one dared to question him. Yin looked at him with a face full of disbelief. Meanwhile, Jungkook held her gaze intently until, a few seconds later, her body swayed. She fainted too, shocked and overwhelmed by everything she had just witnessed with her own eyes. But before her body could hit the floor, Jungkook's arms swiftly caught her. Calmly, he lifted her light frame into a bridal carry. His eyes softened as he looked down at his wife, now unconscious in his arms. Naughty wife, you shouldn't have followed me here. This place is far too filthy for you. Jungkook walked out carrying Yin in his arms. 2 bodyguards followed close behind. One of them quickly opened the rear passenger door of Jungkook's car. Gently, Jungkook laid Yin on the seat and covered her with his jacket. I'll sit in the back. You drive. He ordered one of the bodyguards. And my wife's car, handle it later. Make sure nothing's left behind. The bodyguard nodded and quickly moved to carry out the task. Jungkook got in and sat beside Yin, wrapping her weak body tightly in his arms. From time to time, he placed soft kisses on her forehead and hair, as if trying to soothe the nightmare he had just dragged her into. The car slowly pulled away from the scene, taking them back to the mansion. The room was silent, the only sound being the faint ticking of the wall clock in the dim glow of the bedside lamp. Yin lay quietly on the bed, her body calm, but her face still pale from deep shock. Beside her, Jungkook sat leaning against the headboard, his eyes never leaving her face. His long fingers gently held her cold hand, occasionally brushing the back of it softly, as if hoping his touch could call her back to consciousness. He stared for a long time, so long, before finally letting out a quiet sigh and murmuring, mostly to himself, "I know. I made you see my darkest side. Truth is, I never wanted to show you this." Time passed. Several minutes went by, until finally, Yin's eyelids began to flutter. Her small body stirred weakly, her brows furrowed, then slowly, her eyes opened. "Jungkook," she whispered softly. Jungkook immediately leaned down, his eyes fixed on his wife's now awake face. "Baby," he said softly. He cupped Yin's face in both hands, gazing deeply into her eyes. "You're awake." Yin blinked slowly. Her breathing was heavy. The familiar view of the bedroom greeted her, but the comfort of the bed was not what rushed into her thoughts. Instead, it was a flood of memories, crashing in all at once. The old building, the sound of a gunshot, a woman's lifeless body, and Jungkook, her husband, stood tall with a gun in his hand. Yin stayed still, staring into the face of her husband, who was now so close, his eyes filled with both tenderness and concern. She looked at Jungkook for a long time before her weak voice finally broke the silence. "Why? Did you do it?" The room fell into sudden stillness. Even the ticking of the clock felt louder than their breaths. Jungkook looked away, his jaw clenched, and for a moment, he said nothing. But eventually, with a rough and heavy voice, he began to speak. "Back then, when I was in my 3rd year of college, there was a transfer student in my class. Her name was Nara. She started approaching me slowly. I kept rejecting her because I wasn't interested, but she didn't give up. She confessed her feelings to me. I turned her down again." Jungkook took a deep breath, his voice starting to tighten. "Then one Sunday, my mom went out to do some shopping. Not long after, we got news. She'd been in an accident. My dad and I rushed to the hospital, and Nara was already there." Yin's eyes widened. "My mom said Nara was the one who helped her on the street. From that moment on, it became hard to keep pushing her away. I started feeling guilty. Our relationship slowly improved. We got closer, and eventually, I accepted her feelings, and we started dating." A bitter smile tugged at Jungkook's lips, one born from pain, not joy. "But it turns out, the accident was staged. It was all planned by my dad's enemy, and Nara was the adopted daughter of that man. Everything had been set up from the start." Yin could only sit in silence, absorbing each word. "As my relationship with Nara grew, we became an official couple. 2 months later, I brought her to this mansion, because it was my mom's birthday." Jungkook lowered his head, his face tense with suppressed emotion. "We had dinner together. It turns out that was when she made her move. Quietly, she slipped poison into my dad's drink. The poison worked slowly. After Nara went home, my dad complained of dizziness and said he wanted to rest. But he never woke up again. When the doctor came, we found out he'd been poisoned. We launched an investigation right away, and every trace led to Nara." Jungkook's voice grew deeper, heavier. "After that incident, Nara disappeared. She never came back to campus. Turns out, her parents told her to run abroad." Yin held her breath, her entire body frozen. Then, in a faint voice, she asked, "Then, what about her parents?" Jungkook gave a faint smile, but his eyes were hollow. "I got rid of them a long time ago." Yin felt a tightness in her chest. She didn't know what to say, but one question still lingered in her mind. "Why didn't you ever tell me this from the beginning, Jungkook?" For the first time that night, Jungkook looked unsure. He stared into his wife's eyes, clear, questioning, then answered in a quiet but steady tone. "Honestly, I rejected our arranged marriage at first." Yin froze. She stared at her husband in disbelief. "Why?" she asked softly. Jungkook looked deep into her eyes. "Because you're a doctor." Yin was stunned, confused. "What do you mean?" Jungkook sighed. "Our worlds are too different, Yin. You live to save lives, while I live by taking them. Doctors, police, judges, lawyers, they live by rules, by law, by principles. They believe justice will be served through due process, but I don't live in that world. I live in a world where if I don't strike back, I'll be the one erased." From the beginning I knew. You were too pure to be dragged into the darkness of my life, and I didn't want you to become an obstacle, stopping me from seeking revenge by telling me to leave it to the police or to follow the law, and so on. Yin remained silent. Jungkook let out a sigh. That's why I decided, if I were ever to tell you, it would only be after everything was over, after it was all done. I didn't want to be burdened by any advice. I just wanted to carry out my revenge until the very end. Upon hearing that, Yin's eyes welled up with tears, but not from anger, from sadness, from disappointment, from not knowing what else to say when her heart loved someone who lived in a world she couldn't understand. She turned her face away, staring blankly at the bedroom ceiling. Jungkook said nothing more. That night, they simply sat in silence, lost into hearts that deeply loved each other, but held on to principles that could never align. The morning sun crept gently through the gaps in the curtains. The air was still cold, with a thin mist lingering outside the window, as if reluctant to leave the remnants of a heavy, dark night. Inside the room, everything remained quiet. Jungkook hadn't slept at all. He was still sitting at the edge of the bed, his head leaning back against the headboard, eyes staring up at the ceiling, and one hand gently holding Yin's fingers, who had been fast asleep since their conversation ended the night before. He didn't know what his wife had been thinking after hearing everything, but now, there was one thing he feared most, that she would start to drift away from him. Until finally, a soft and hoarse voice broke the silence. Morning. Jungkook quickly turned his head. Yin opened her eyes slowly, gazing at her husband with tired eyes still marked by the traces of tears. Jungkook squeezed her hand a little tighter. Did you sleep well? Yin gave a faint nod. She looked away, stared at the ceiling briefly, then returned her gaze to Jungkook's face. Last night, I did a lot of thinking. Her voice was calm, but there was pain in it. About everything you did, and everything you never told me. Jungkook lowered his gaze, holding his breath. I'm not an angel, Jungkook, Yin continued softly. I know the world isn't as simple as black and white, but, honestly, all this time, I thought you were just cold, not this dark. I thought maybe you got into fights sometimes, but not that you could kill. Jungkook's face tightened, but he didn't say anything. Honestly, I was shocked, but more than that, I'm disappointed. I'm your wife, but you chose to carry all of this alone. Yin sighed. You think I couldn't handle the truth about you? Maybe you're right. Maybe I would have tried to stop you, but not because I wanted to judge you, because I didn't want you to be the one in danger. Jungkook looked into Yin's eyes. His expression slowly softened. Yin, you're so pure, telling you all of this. I was honestly scared you'd end up hating me. They fell silent for a moment. Then, in a very soft voice, Yin asked, now that your revenge is over, will you go back to a normal life, or is there still someone else you need to deal with? Jungkook lifted his head, uncertainty in his eyes. I'm not sure. In a world like mine, done rarely means it's truly over. Yin looked down, her heart heavy as she tried to accept that reality. Sometimes I don't want to kill, Jungkook added quietly, but if I don't, then I'll be the one killed. Yin looked at him for a long time. Then, without saying a word, she slowly sat up and wrapped her arms tightly around him, as tightly as she could, as if trying to pull two distant worlds into one. Jungkook closed his eyes. He returned the embrace, and for the first time, the weight he had carried for so long felt just a little lighter. They didn't know what the future held, but that morning, for the first time, they stood on the same side. Because sometimes, life isn't always about black. It isn't always about white. One night, the night sky was pitch dark, the moon hidden behind thick clouds. The streets were empty and silent, with only the sound of Yin's car engine humming softly as she drove along. She had just finished her night shift at the hospital. Her face looked exhausted, and her body was starting to feel drained. But without warning, her car began to swerve slightly. Yin frowned and slowly pulled over to the side of the road. She got out and walked to the left side of the car. Her eyes widened. Two tires were flat, not just one, but both. This can't be, she muttered suspiciously. She crouched down, ran her fingers along the tires, and noticed the slashes, sharp and clean, like they had been done on purpose. But before she could stand up, suddenly, something struck the back of her neck hard. Yin's vision went completely black. Her body gave out unconscious. Two strong arms quickly caught her before she hit the pavement. A tall man with a sinister grin greeted her limp body. A face Yin never wanted to see again, now returning like a ghost from the past. Yugyeom, her obsessive ex-boyfriend. Calmly, Yugyeom caressed her cheek and stared at her unconscious face with eyes full of twisted obsession. Finally, we can be together again, darling. His voice was cold but sweet, like poison wrapped in sugar. He opened the door of his black car and gently placed Yin in the back seat, as if handling something precious, then shut the door. The car slowly drove off, disappearing into the darkness of the night.